one of the questions I got a few different versions of was kind of that basic thing of, I'm starting out mixing. I want to learn about mixing. How do I learn about it? How do I do it? How do I get better at it? And I know you and I have lots of thoughts about this, but probably will answer it in one of those larger philosophical ways. But what do you think about that generally? How do you think about, I guess maybe, how do you think about mixing as something connected to and distinct from production, writing, engineering as tracking? Mixing has evolved so much in the last, you've been a mixer, 15 years now?
Yeah. 15.
And even in those 15 years, the idea of like people that mix in the box, wasn't a thing at the very beginning of when we were starting. How do you think about mixing, people who are interested in mixing as it relates to production and other things?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing, to learn how to mix, I feel like one has to find a mentor. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it has to be a one-on-one personal mentorship where you're in the room day in, day out. That's my experience, and we can go into that for sure, because I think it's helpful to hear some stories in real life. But I interviewed my mentor, Tony Maserati, recently after one of the conversation nights. And when I asked him who his mentor was, he had a really interesting response, which, when the conversation comes out, everyone will get to hear a little bit more in depth. But he didn't have a specific mentor. He said he had many mentors, and they were unknowingly his mentor, meaning he would be a fly on the wall in a studio, and he would learn from them. He would research, he would read. We have so many outlets to finding information on techniques and approaches that people go on about at this point. I would say there's a lot more bad than good out there, as there is any bit of information on the internet. So I'm actually working on I'm working on a platform where hopefully we can distill some information down and kind of pop it out the other end. But mentorship in general seems to be the way, finding, the people that you look up to when you look at their credits and you hear the consistent thread through their work. So, I mean, it's a lot of listening.
It's interesting. You and I both had, do you think of Tony as obviously he was your mentor, you worked under him for a long time. Did you work for other mixers, other producers, engineers, and it was just him?
It was just him. I mean, I wouldn't even say, and I think you would agree, I don't even say that I worked for Tony. I think I worked with Tony. I think it was mostly collaborative, which he's so good at. I think that in general, that's how you become your own version of what you want to be. And if I think there's other ways to do it. That was our way. I did have a very short-term studio position where I kind of understand where Tony was coming from with his impersonal mentorships, where I was the assistant at a studio for a very brief time, intern/assistant in a studio on Long Island, where I never got asked to clean the bathrooms, which is kind of amazing. I was always told to go in the room. I don't know, the owner, we were both saxophone players. He was one of Billy Joel's saxophone players back in the day. The legend. And I think because we were both horn players, he took a liking to me really fast. So he was like, go in the room. So I would never ask any questions. I'm pretty shy in general, so I didn't really know when to assert in the room when I was 17, 18 years old. So I kind of just sat back. But I remember watching these engineers. Everyone had a different approach. There was a guy in there mixing Dream Theater one day, and his faders were really hot on the board. And then there was someone else mixing like a folk record. I forgot exactly who it was at the time, but his faders were really low. And he kind of turned around at one point and told me that, he was overdriving. One of them was overdriving the inputs of the console, so the faders had to be low. Just these basic techniques. And, the opposite would be that your input signal is really low, so the faders have to be hot to hit tape right. And, different approaches, not one better than the other. So I was a fly on the wall for that. But Tony and the studying with him, man, that's a different story, because it's mostly about how to be professional. Interesting.
It's interesting to think about the duality of both going very deep in one particular thing and at the same time being aware of lots of different approaches. Because it seems to me that, I also worked under with a great engineer producer, Eric Valentine, who I think he's an amazing producer, songwriter, musician. He's an incredible drummer. I think at heart, he's a scientist, and therefore a super engineering. And obviously all the undertone audio stuff is such incredible gear. You and I both have a lot of it. Yeah. And so, but I also benefited from, having a very specific mentor and working with someone very closely, learning a very specific approach. But at the same time, I worked for a number of other producers, working with Flood on a 30 Seconds to Mars record, working for Jakir King on some things, Dennis Herring, a few other producers, and vastly different approaches. It's interesting you talk about professionalism. I actually think that's probably the thing that long-term mentorship teaches you more than anything else, because in the end, you really do have to find your own approach to things. But watching someone work and being around someone and just being that fly on the wall or actively participating, both are valuable, and they intertwine. To find someone who you can learn how to be a professional from, learn how to have patience and poise, and how to be hard on yourself when you need to and not hard on yourself at other times. I feel like that's an undervalued skill these days too, because the systems of studios and mentorships don't seem to exist quite as much.
Reliability. Someone that can be relied upon across the board. For example, just in real life, yesterday, I'm on, I think, maybe improv 5 or 6 on a mix with an artist, new artist developing. She's so great, so excited about this project. And, I think she approved a mix at one point. And then she came back yesterday and said, hey, there was something magical about the vocal on mix 3. I'd love to go back to that. I was able to get back to that in 15 seconds, and the mix was sent back to her in 6 minutes. I mean, that's something.
I'm hiring you again. Yeah.
But that's exactly. And but that's pure Tony. That's pure, hey, if someone wants to get back to the version 2 bass, you should be able to get back there in less than a minute. I mean, how's your archival? How's your backup? How's all of this stuff?
It seems to be a combination of both organization, which is extremely important, especially for mixers. I mean, if you're a wild creative and you're just like, making crazy beats or throwing paint on a canvas or whatever, you have more leeway to be eccentric.
But do you? But yes, you do. But when 5 years, I mean, I just had a song come out, as you know, from 4 years ago that I co-produced. I mean, those stems existed, and when they were asked for them from me, I gave them to them clean, right? So it was really easy. I don't really fully agree. I think that that's a very good point. Eccentric writer producer type, have an engineer that has that brain.
That may be the answer to that the eccentric, all over the place, disorganized people are not going to be successful without either learning organization or having someone in their life that takes care of that role. And the other side of it, as you were talking about that, there is the role of ego in all of it. How much, you are in this place now where you are just crushing it as a mixer. You've been very consistent. I could compliment you endlessly to your face and make you uncomfortable if you would like. You probably wouldn't like it all. But you've been doing a particular thing for a while now, and my career has been a combination of a lot of different things as a writer, as a producer, as an executive producer. Sometimes I'm mixing my stuff, sometimes I'm mixing other people's stuff. What I realized, that one of the things that's been toughest for me, which I've gotten a lot better at in the last 5 or 6 years, is the emotional attachment to things that I'm working on. And being like, not even like the way I did it is great, but if I do something and somebody approves of a mix and then we do 6 more and then they want to go back to version 2, it doesn't bother me anymore, but it used to bother me a lot. It used to, I wouldn't resist it. They're hiring me, but I could tell that was a frustrating thing for me.
But why would you resist going back to an initial intent that you had, right? So your version 2 is most likely a better mix to your initial instinct towards the mix. So the resentment of going backwards seems counterintuitive to me, at least.
By the way, totally counterintuitive. Absolutely. Which is, something I feel a lot more now. I think part of it is just the frustration with having to deal with other people's timelines and frustrations and uncertainties and that sort of thing. I think what I'm getting at is I realize that the people that are the most successful and have the longest career doing any of this stuff are the people that really are easy to deal with and are consistent and just want to help their collaborators, the people hiring their clients, their friends, get the best thing. And above all else.
That's all I want.
Yeah. And by the way, it's always the best result.
Yeah, the least friction possible in order to get the piece of art across the line, really.
You know, as a mixer, as a producer, if you're coming in toward the end of a process, you always have to remember too that everybody else in the process has very likely been extremely stressed on and off for a very long time. So not only is it good just generally to be super flexible and be super easy and be reliable, but you're also providing sort of the icing on the cake or the finishing touches of the whole process, of a much longer process that you haven't been a part of. And so you being that easy neutral party tends to help a lot.